What up, YouTube? Dharma Boy here. Just want to give you my thoughts on the Rogue One Star Wars story that I watched last Friday. And honestly, I wasn't expecting much from the movie. I wasn't sure what to expect. I heard that there were a lot of reshoots, and from the pictures that we saw from the final released movie compared to what the web trailer was showing, a lot of stuff looked different. So I was kind of skeptical, and I was like, okay, well, Disney is going to try and make a Star Wars film talking about the backstory about how the Death Star was created, and introduce some new characters to the Star Wars universe. A lot of the characters I have never heard of before, besides Darth Vader, Krennic, who is Director Krennic, the one that was in charge of getting the weapon ready for the Death Star. Don't think I've even ever heard of him either. So yeah, that was interesting. But overall, after I was watching the movie and during the movie, I would have to say the movie was fantastic. I love this movie. It was so good. I think because of my lowered expectations, it was fantastic. It had more than I was expecting for any Star Wars film. The scale of the battles, the fighting, the acting was fairly decent. And I made a list of a few points of the things that I liked about the show and about the characters and so on. So the characters, you don't really fall in love with the characters, and I except for the one that everybody knew was going to be in the show, which was Vader. And the idea of the movie was you're not supposed to really care about the characters because they're kind of a throwaway characters because you never hear of them in Star Wars lore as the other movies progress from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back to Jedi and then Force Awakens. And the idea, I think, what Disney was going for, you're supposed to care about the mission. And I think that's what they were trying to focus on. It's about the mission and not about the characters. I didn't fall in love with any of the characters. I didn't really care for them as much as, like when you first meet Leia, Luke, Solo, Chewbacca, you really care for those characters. For me, I would say the main character, the protagonist, Jyn Erso, I didn't really connect with her at all like I did for the other characters in episode 4 and 5 and 6. I mean, I also dig Lando Calrissian. I liked Boba Fett. I even liked Jabba the Hutt. It was a cool character because you really got a feeling for that character and how vile they were or bad and so on. For me, K2SO was probably the funniest thing. He was just awesome having a robot that just basically said whatever on his mind. And it is funny because it actually worked out where him being blunt and straightforward and just saying whatever was programmed into him, and the way he just blurted things out was fantastic. You also had Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones. She was the protagonist, but you didn't really feel for her. It just didn't really click for me. So I was like, okay, whatever. She wasn't like Rey from Force Awakens, where you kind of had a feeling, okay, she's living by herself, blah 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 blah. And from the trailers that we saw, from the web trailers, I thought she was going to be like this bounty hunter, and she's going to be this real badass, kind of like Solo. And then they finally ask her, "Can you join the rebellion and help us because you're so good at all this bounty hunter stuff or smuggler stuff, and you're good with a blaster? Could you help us get the Death Star plans?" It was nothing like that. She was just happened to be the daughter of the person that made the Death Star weapon, not the Death Star, but the Death Star weapon. And you have Diego Luna, who was Cassian Andor. He was kind of a badass, and his character kind of goes with the feel and the theme of this movie, which was it was very dark. So even though he was a good guy, a good character that's pretty much through the whole movie, he wasn't as nice of a guy as you think he is, and he wasn't as nice as Solo, because Solo shot Greedo, but we still love Solo. You get Donnie Yen, who played Chirrut Imwe, and Wen Jiang, who played Baz Malbus. I didn't even know their names during the movie. I'm like, the blind guy's buddy. Honestly, like names weren't explained or heard properly for me. You get to hear Jun Urso's name and Cassian Andor because K2SO mentions it a few times, but the other two for Donnie Yen and Wen Jiang's character. I didn't even know Wen Jiang's character was Baz Malbus. I had no idea. He was just the guy for me with the cool guns who couldn't miss. Ben Mendelsohn was the Director Krennic, plays the ambitious Imperial officer who wants to take control of the Death Star from Tarkin, and he's trying to gain the favor of the Emperor and Darth Vader. Yeah, he was a good bad guy, nothing over the top, but he was a decent bad guy. He did a pretty good job with it. You also get Forrest Whitaker's in it for like a few minutes, and it didn't make any sense, but I'll be playing the trailer of the web trailer of Rogue One as I'm talking here, so you guys can see. I was really confused because I thought Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker, was supposed to have a bald head. And I thought he was a badass the way they were making it out to be. I thought he was part of Rogue One, but he has hair in the movie and then he doesn't do anything except just die. By the way, I'm going to warn at the beginning too that there are spoilers. So be aware, I'm going to talk about a few spoilers in here. Please don't be upset, but I will put a warning right at the beginning. You have Vader, of course. Like I said, he's a badass in this movie for I think the few minutes that he's in there. He basically rekindles the hate that you had for him as a badass because he's an ass. He's just a big bully. Likes to push his way around, talking the Force, taking advantage of the weak. So even as a kid, I never cared for Vader. I thought he was cool. Don't get me wrong, but I hated Vader as a character because when he first comes on Princess Leia's ship and he's going through, the rebels who are trying to protect the corridor. I'm like, why don't you just shoot this guy? Just kill him, kill him, kill him. Why are you missing and stuff? And that's because he has the Force, and it's further explained in this movie as the movie goes on at the very end, which was probably one of the best scenes for Darth Vader like ever. There's also some cameos from our favorite R2D2, C3PO. You have CG Tarkin, and you have CG young Leia, which was really cool. Tarkin was pretty good. A few times you could tell it was CG, depending on the way the lighting was. I think they could have done a little bit of a better job with the lighting, so you couldn't 100% tell if it was a CG Tarkin. Leia you could tell was pretty good. It was really well done, but you could kind of tell it was CG. But they did a pretty good job. A few more years, I think they're gonna nail it where you probably couldn't even tell. I mean, you can't even tell with some of the action that was going on in Rogue One. It was done so well. You're like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And of course, you get the few Cantina guys from Tatooine, and it's pretty funny seeing some of those small cameos, like even with R2D2, C3PO, and so on. You get a few cameos from Red Squadron, Blue Squadron, some of those guys. You get to see some of that, and I think what they did was they took some of the floor cut footage and stock footage of the red team, blue team guys in the X-wings and the bombers and so on, and they put it into this movie seamlessly, which was fantastic. What I liked about the movie the most, I liked how the movie was very dark. It had this feel of Empire Strikes Back. I would put it up there with Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't so happy-go-lucky, kind of like the New Hope and the one with the Ewoks, which Return of the Jedi. It didn't feel like that for me. This one was very dark, and it was a movie with a lot of tension happening because even though they get the plans of the Death Star to Leia, they do a pretty good job with the tension. So you have that bit of tension, like, oh, okay, they're going to get this done. Is this mission going to fail? Is it going to complete? Even though you know in your head. So good job on the director and good job on the writers for making that come through. The action was amazing. Some of the best Army versus Army combat in the whole saga. And I think it's what fans really wanted, especially from people that played the Battlefront games. Battlefront 1 and 2 for PC and for the Xbox, original Xbox, and then the one that I'm playing on the PS4. Fantastic. It was great. It was great to see that straight battle going on between the galactic ships, which were between the Empire and the Rebels, and then on the ground, some little bit of guerrilla warfare with the ATSTs. The AT-ATs was fantastic. They had some really good X-wing versus TIE fighter battles as well, which is nice to see. And here's a spoiler: even when they took the Hammerhead ship and they rammed the side of the Star Destroyer to bump it into another Star Destroyer to bump it into the shield generating spaceship or the orbiting ship, it was fantastic. I've never seen that before, but they actually did a ramming like that before. It was pretty fantastic. I think the last time we actually see a physical ship go crashing into the ground, pretty sure was Revenge of the Sith, which was the third prequel, and that's when one of the galactic ships goes crashing into the ground. And I think it was Obi-Wan and Anakin were controlling it, and it crashes into Coruscant. That's the only time you actually see anything like really physical ships crashing and going into things, which is really neat. I liked that you got to see these new type of troopers. So I guess you had the jungle warfare troopers, which had kind of like the camo. So they kind of looked like the speeder bike troopers, which were white in Return of the Jedi, but here you get the jungle camouflage on them, which was really cool because the planet that they were on, it was uh, it was tropical, so it kind of made sense that they would have that type of trooper out there. So at least they have the trooper specifically for that particular zone. It just made no sense where you had Endor and they're in a forest moon and these guys are wearing white. It just didn't make any sense to me. Even though they were wearing like camouflage capes and hoods to cover themselves up and so on. I mean, at least the rebels were prepared properly. You get to see the Death Troopers that hung out with Krennic, which was really cool because I guess they're the only troopers that don't really miss. They were pretty accurate, so I guess if you had a really good accurate shot, you got promoted up to a Dark Trooper or a Death Trooper in black. So those were pretty cool. And they were speaking like some weird language. You couldn't understand if they were speaking the common language in Star Wars because they had some weird sounds. So I'm not sure what kind of creatures they were. I'm not sure if Death Troopers or Black Troopers were supposed to be only a certain type of species, maybe because they were well known for being marksmen. Who knows? Maybe somebody can fill me in on that. I'm not very good with the Star Wars lore. You got to see a tank trooper, and then you get to see a new type of tank. I'm not sure if I've seen these tanks in any movies before, but I'm pretty sure I have seen it in a Battlefront game. I think Battlefront 1 or 2 on the PC, which I played a lot. You also get to see the home world of the Jedi called Jedha before the Death Star nukes it. Now it makes sense that the Jedi are called the Jedi because they come from a place where they studied the Force, which is a temple on Jedha. So there you go. It's finally explained. And they talk more about kyber crystals as well because the Empire is on there trying to harvest kyber crystals for the weapon. And the kyber crystals are also used for the Jedi lightsabers, which was really cool. There's also the part of the plot in New Hope where everybody was wondering how could you have a Death Star with this humongous flaw, which is so easy to take the whole thing out. And they finally explained it, and they finally completed, and it made sense. A large part of Star Wars lore, which was the chute where you shoot the two torpedoes and it goes into the core of the Death Star and blows the whole thing up. And that's because Galen Orso, played by Mads Mikkelsen, reluctantly forced into helping finish off the weapon for the Death Star using the kyber crystals. He made sure that there was a weakness that would be his final revenge on the Empire, forcing him to build the Death Star, killing his wife, and him being estranged from his daughter, Jyn Erso. My final thoughts: the movie was fantastic. The movie is more about the mission, not the character, so people have to be aware of that. For example, the characters of Jyn Erso, she's a nobody character. Jyn Erso is not a Sith, she's not a Jedi, she's just some Imperial officer, science officer's child that is a common thief. She kind of hustles and makes her way around the galaxy. She has no real special powers, except for the fact that in this particular story, she just happens to be the daughter of one of the guys that made the Death Star weapon. This movie was visually amazing. I loved that they used real effects, real props, real uncg'd backgrounds for locations, and when they did use certain backgrounds, it blended in perfectly. I loved the fact that they used the real props. They had some of the real characters back. They didn't CG them, and the CG that they did use was integral and part of the main story. It wasn't just thrown in there, kind of like how the remastered versions of the original three, episode 4, 5, and 6 that George Lucas did, where he had all this extra stuff thrown in, and yeah, none of that was happening in this one. This was great. This movie is easily in my top three Star Wars films of all time. I would still say New Hope is my favorite out of all of them. I also think that this movie would be in my number three. I love Return of the Jedi second, and then I liked this movie third. I think it pushed out Empire and Force Awakens for me in my top three. I would rate this movie 5 Akbars out of 5 because it's a trap because it's going to steal your money. So I think this movie is well worth a Blu-ray purchase or at least a digital purchase. It's totally worth the money. They did a phenomenal job. And with that, I would like to close with the following. I would like to give my condolences to Carrie Fisher's family. It was heartbreaking news as a big Star Wars fan to hear that she had passed away. She will always be our princess. She was my first princess because she was the first on-screen princess I'd ever seen as a child when I watched Star Wars: A New Hope, which was the first movie I ever watched in the theater. She was a badass. She knew how to use a gun. It was fantastic. It's quite sad that Carrie Fisher passed away at the young age of 60, but I knew she had some issues before, so my condolences to her family. She'll be missed, and I'm not sure how they're going to do the rest of the continuation of the Force Awakens saga. Most likely they'll have to CG her in, but I would like to thank Carrie Fisher for all her work and for making one of the best characters in the Star Wars lore. She was fantastic. She was beautiful. We will always remember Carrie Fisher and that awesome outfit, the slave girl outfit in the Jabba the Hutt palace. It was fantastic. She was so beautiful, and it's such a shame that she's gone. And we'll all miss her. And like I said before, she will always be our princess. So that, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys thought about the movie and what you guys thought about Rogue One. So like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys thought about Rogue One. Give me your opinions of the movie. And I will talk to you guys soon. Take it easy.